I want to, it seems to me that this particular subdivision does not have a golf course, so this is just something that's designated as a golf cart path that would go from residential areas to recreational areas or something?
That's correct. That was what was shown on the original plan. That plan was developed in, I believe it was in the late 1980s, so it's a very old subdivision. That the golf cart paths did show a connection between the different phases of the project. Okay. This release does not affect the other portions of the project, which we have security in place and subdivision agreements in place. The developer has still the responsibility to complete Gold Creek Estates Unit 3, Unit 2, and so forth.
Okay. Just stand by there. Maybe other questions. Mr. Clapp, do you have any other questions on this?
Yeah, one of my concerns and stuff is you guys probably go by and stuff. There is no bike trails, no walk trails, nothing from in front of the highway. And this development is keep on going and going and going and going, and there's no off-street improvements done. And we keep on talking about bike trails and stuff like this, and it's right, and it bottlenecks Rancho, La Catena, and all that from getting into town. And the other places have put in walkways, but this place hasn't. And that's the reason I sort of brought it up, because it's sooner or later they need to look at it, because they keep on approving this, and this is never addressed in none of the things. And it's something that, if you look at the general plan, everybody wants that in the area, but somehow it just keeps on going.
Okay, your point's well taken. Those improvements out at the street, though, don't seem to be affected by this particular issue this morning. So, okay. Any other questions from any board member or any member of the audience on this item? Okay, if not, the chair entertains a motion on this.
I move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for approval on this item. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Okay, we have item 8. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Karen Varney, County Clerk. The reason I asked for this to be pulled is because the West Point Veterans Memorial District was not able to get their paperwork into us on time for this resolution, so I just asked that the resolution be adopted omitting the West Point Veterans Memorial District.
Karen, could it be approved and then...
If they get their paperwork back to us, we can always put it on. We can put it on again. A resolution for them.
What I was thinking is just to avoid more paperwork, more staff time, another cover report, etc. If there was a way a motion could be made to approve this with the anticipation that West Point will get it in and it could be approved for everything.
What's the deadline?
I actually would ask council about that, because technically I suppose the resolution is accepting that they've done their work. And it's my understanding that they have actually adopted a resolution, but we haven't seen it. It's not been signed or anything. So,
yeah, we met with a representative of the district yesterday and tried to come up with some solutions, but it seems the best one was to let them get their paperwork in. Actually, the district seemed to have not be entirely clear as to what they wanted to do. So,
okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
That was it too.
All right, does everybody understand that Karen is just simply requesting approval of this, striking the West Point Veterans Memorial District? Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll move the item as amended.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, and we'll be looking forward to the West Point portion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are now at item 9. This is public comments. We have this is the opportunity for anyone to come forward and talk for 5 minutes. Good morning, Mr. Ginger.
My name's Frank Ginger, and I don't understand how either bus line for the handicap or the public can park illegally. I don't understand it. Why is it okay? Why can't we have two parking for the handicap buses that are 3 feet too long, 2.5 feet too wide? I got pictures that the lady wouldn't let the man park in the handicap. I got 3 pictures if you want to see them. I've already showed them to the rest. I don't understand. Corruption's corruption, and that's corruption. You come on now. I'm handicapped legal, and that boy didn't want me to park there. Well, he made a big mistake because I'm going in there. And if he's standing in the way, and if I have to hit him because he's stupid, I'm going to do it. I've got 3 pictures here that the lady is standing blocking the handicap. I took all 3 pictures. And I want to know why. You can't do that. And you know, I mean, fair's fair. But when this lady tells me I can't park there because her bus is too wide and she's taking up half of a handicap and half of the lines, no. That means that if she can do it, I can do it. And there's supposed to be nobody parking in those white lines in front of the store at the Safe Smart. And she does it. And she thinks she's smug, but she's not. She was going to call the police on me, and I told her, I'll do one better for you. I'll call them for you. And I did. When the cop came out, the cop refused in Angel's Camp to give her a $359 ticket. So that means if she can do it, that means I can do it. Is that not right? Wrong is wrong and right is right. And I try to be a good guy, but I can be the other way pretty good. But you know what? This is malarkey. And she's cocky. You want to see these? I'll give them to you. But you can see by her reaction of standing out there trying to stop this old man from parking in the handicap. That's right.
Mr. Ginger, you've been here a number of times with the same issue. Let me ask somebody from Public Works.
Foothill Village bus.
Oh, it's Foothill Village bus? Oh.
Yes. This is the other one. Now,
yeah.
they should make 2 spots in front of the store that'll take care of the buses.
Okay, Mr. Ginger, it's been pointed out to me just to hear that the bus in your picture is a Foothill Village bus. We have no jurisdiction over that bus. I was prepared to ask somebody from Public Works if we could make our drivers with our transit system buses aware that they are not supposed to be blocking that space. And
they all know me. They know better. Yeah. I welded a back bumper on the back of my truck. But they blatantly, when I got out of my truck and told them, can I please leave? And they say as soon as the bus gets loaded, well, you ain't going to tell me that no more. I told them, move the buses or I'll move it for you. It's real simple. They cannot do what they're doing. You know it as well as I do. I mean, handicap is handicap. Let's make 2 parking spots where their buses can fit. That's all I'm asking. And the other thing is, these sheriffs over here that take care of our lobby and stuff, they do a heck of a job. Why you guys want to retire them and put the young ones on, that's crazy. That's stupid. That's only my opinion, but I already don't like them. But these old guys, leave them alone, keep their jobs. They're good cops. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ginger. Mr. Studley, how are you?
Very fine. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'm David Studley. I'm from Mountain Ridge, California. I wanted to address the board briefly this morning about the topic of the budget. I would like to explain to you, in my view, why the budget as currently proposed doesn't meet the clear mandate of the public, and also suggest a conceptual approach if further negotiations are required regarding this budget on how you might approach the difficult choices that you're going to be forced to make. It was just 2 months ago, seems like longer, but it was May 11th when the public clearly said, we don't want the same status quo in big government. by a 65% margin statewide, they rejected the proposal to increase payments to the state, which has affected us so dramatically in Calaveras County. And the people of Calaveras County, by almost 69% margin, not margin, 69% approval rating, said exactly the same thing. We don't want bigger government. I believe that the current budget that has been proposed fails to address that mandate. The people have clearly said, we want government, less government. What the budget has given them is not less government, but miniaturized government. By contracting every department, or almost every department, by the same 17.5% mandate, you haven't changed the format of government. All you've said is that we're going to be 17.5% less effective in providing the same range of services that we currently provide. I don't think that's what the public voted for. I think the public elected you to follow the clear public mandates that have been set in prioritizing what government should do. Now, if you're forced to further negotiate this budget, I think that the only sensible approach is to start to allocate the services that are provided from the limited resources that you are given. Instead of a flat line across the board budget, think about what the public that you serve wants and how you can mandate. You made a first start, a difficult choice with this branch library issue, and I commend you for it. It was widely unpopular, but it is the difficult and unpopular decisions that you are forced to address that we've elected you to do in this difficult budget time. Now I want to call on you to make the same allocation if you're required to do so on a much grander scale. What are the public mandates that you need to serve? Well, I don't have the answer to all that, but I have a couple of answers that I'm going to offer you for your consideration. Safety first. The people of the Calaveras County have clearly said that their highest priority is that they want to be safe in their persons, in their homes, and at work. The people of Calaveras County want to tell those folks who are predisposed to crime that they will be arrested, they will be prosecuted, and they will be punished. If you're going to be required to make the difficult choices to allocate limited resources, not just reduce them proportionally, but to allocate them, then safety has to be your highest priority, in my opinion. What are the low public priorities? Well, I think the people have clearly said that we don't want government living and feeding on itself. We don't want bloated government. We want streamlined government. So here's a modest proposal that I'm going to suggest to you that probably will fall flat, but nonetheless, maybe something to consider. At work, I empty my own trash cans. I clean off the top of my desk. I dust my own telephone. Why can't you? Only takes a minute or two. At the end of the day, you could haul the trash out and throw it in a receptacle someplace. We have a full jail. Why don't you have the prisoners come and clean the restrooms or vacuum the floors? If we're going to have a bigger jail, we'll have more manpower to do that. Now, that's something you could do that might cut down on the amount of custodial work that you are facing. And custodial work is a big item in your budget. It's just a little thing, but it's something that you personally could do if, of course, you have to renegotiate or negotiate further what to do with this budget. So I personally, for what it's worth, would urge you, in future negotiations, bear in mind these public concerns. Don't just reduce your budget equitably among all departments, which preserves the status quo, but creates further inefficiencies. Instead, allocate those resources to what you yourselves determine is in the best public interest. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Frances Sharpam, and as you probably know, I'm a landowner in an area commonly referred to as the Gilmore disaster area. Because of the unique environmental issues on that road, I had to deal for a couple of years with your Department of Public Work. In the beginning, that department was really the source of great frustration and anger for me, because normally you didn't reach a person on the phone. Telephone messages who left were never answered, so I became really quite frustrated. All that changed with the hiring of a guy named Vernis Hedeks. When Vernis was hired, he really got involved with Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, and he even assured the support of Congressman Lindgren and his team. He became highly educated and experienced with environmental issues. They're really unique for this county, and to deal with federal agencies. He got the job done quickly, professionally, and he really earned the trust and the respect of the public involved. So when I learned of his interest to become the head of public work, I'm pretty sure he had a good shot at it, because it was a valuable person. So, and I know for a fact that some groups supported him. I wrote a letter, not that I'm that important, but you see, normally citizens don't stand up and write letters for one person. So to my great surprise and to my greater shock, I got the news that he didn't get the job, but instead his position will be eliminated. You could argue in these hard times that every cut you do is painful. I understand that. But what I don't understand is when you decided to hire a new head of public work, what was not so long ago, you knew already our tax revenues would go down the drain. So I don't understand why even that post became available if you have a perfectly good person sitting there who can do the job. I'm a rancher. When I have a cow, it gives me every year a good calf. I'm not bringing it to the auction to buy a new one, just maybe that gives me the same result. I stick to that cow, because why? I pay for that cow and I'm responsible for what I'm doing. So you should be responsible for things you're doing. My concern is that maybe department heads are using these difficult times with budget cuts to promote their own agenda. And there's another issue, and I'm very hesitant to even touch that issue, but I do it anyway. Calaveras County is not to be known the most progressive county. Some people refer to it as redneck county. So what message are you sending that you fire the only person who has a different color than 99% of all the others employees? What message does it give to the people around? So I urge the Board of Supervisors, in the name of all my friends and all the neighbors in our neighborhood, to reconsider that decision. Thank you very much for letting my voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jeannie Middleton. I live in Angels Camp. I work in Calaveras County. And what I've given you here, I took from last year's budget. And I would like to refer you to page 3. These 2 pages appear to be missing from the budget that's been proposed this year. I understand is proposed, and hopefully they'll be there and updated when the budget's done. County of Calaveras mission statement. The mission of Calaveras County government is to provide service, infrastructure, leadership, and vision necessary to advance a safe community, maintain a high quality of life while preserving local history and culture, and to protect the personal liberties of all its citizens. I'd now like to refer you to page 2, the county organizational chart. It is very clear in this chart. This chart was in last year's budget, and I'm assuming it's going to be in this year's budget. Only a couple of names have changed. I don't think the chart changed. At the top of this chart is the citizens of Calaveras County, not the Board of Supervisors, not the sheriff, not the Public Works Director, the citizens of Calaveras County. The next rung on that ladder is the Board of Supervisors, and equal to them, the elected officials of this county. The CAO is below the Board of Supervisors, not above or below any of the elected officials. I want to point out this chart to you. I printed it for you, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton.
Another great day at Board of Supervisors meeting. Another great day for budget discussions. My name is John Rain. I'm from Rancho Calaveras. First item I wanted to bring up is what the lady just mentioned about Public Works Director. The CSAs, especially CSA 1, recommended to the Board of Supervisors a few months back that after working with Mr. Bernice Haddix, we thought he was a really great guy, doing a really great job. He was in as deputy director for the department, and we would like to see him running the whole department because of the way he does his job with the CSAs, especially CSA 1. And the other day when I heard about Mr. Miller being hired as the head honcho for the department, first thing I thought of was, wait a minute, we're short of money. We don't need a position like that filled. Let's wait until next year to see what the budget is like and then maybe consider filling that position. The other item was this gentleman here who was talking about big government. I noticed when I came in today that the grounds around here look kind of ratty. And the first thing I'm thinking about as a former corrections officer is, you got people coming into the jail. You got a room for me? No, don't have a room for you. Go home. We'll let you know when we got a room here. Call a few of these people in. Put a monitor thing on their ankle. Have one of the custodian people that does the grounds work run these people around with hose and shovels and rakes and weed eaters with the proper safety equipment. Take care of those items that need to be done that aren't being taken care of now. Now, the reason I'm here is I was in front of the supervisors back in April, and I mentioned at that time, since we were going to be short of money and we were going to have to cut services in different departments, I had an idea that a lot of people who live in the community would be happy to help with, and that would be a temporary emergency surcharge on dog and cat food to raise more money for animal operations and maybe help out the county by some of that money going from perhaps a animal service person to helping fund a deputy's position who might be getting laid off. And that could be taken care of with a 2 cents a can surcharge on a pouch or a can of cat or dog food only. 10 cents per bag for dog and cat food only. 10 cents per item for leashes and collars and water bowls that people buy for their pets. And this would add money to the animal services budget thereby allowing you to possibly use a part of that money to keep an animal service officer on or to keep a deputy on and making it safer for the community. I don't know if you've discussed that since April. I doubt if you have, because surcharges aren't popular with some of the public. But under these times and budget concerns, I think it might be a good idea to take into consideration. My second item, I'm here representing CSA 1 because my wife told me I could, since she's the chairman. This again goes back to Mr. Haddix. In the letter, the board, or the road committee says, this is in reference to the proposed termination of Mr. Haddix as deputy director. He has demonstrated the following and therefore is a great asset not only to Public Works but to the county as a whole. His willingness to listen and obtain opinions from various committees regarding the stalling and not doing road repairs over the years has improved over other previous directors because of his actions. He's brought culmination to years of discussed problems between Public Works and CSAs, and he has open communications between the department and CSA 1. He brings a sense of discipline and desire for doing the work correctly. He explains and reassures people what's going on, how he's going to do things, and he understands what they want. And his integrity level is optimum. He seems to understand the concept of the whole picture and brings together those entities under the umbrella to meet and discuss and formulate what's going to be done regarding Public Works jobs. He involves himself physically. He goes out and takes a look at problems that are brought to his attention by the CSAs.
Mr. Rain?
He follows up with proposed solutions.
Mr. Rain, if you've been attending meetings regularly, you know that I sort of rein people in at 5 minutes. So I'm going to let you go a little bit beyond 5 minutes, but I'd like to ask you to summarize for us what we have other people waiting to talk.
Okay, the last 3 paragraphs would be, we're asking the county to consider undoing the appointment of the head director for Public Works and retaining Mr. Haddix because we had recommended him for that position before. He's the best person we've had around, and the CSAs and the people on their roads need him more than a new director who is still wet behind the ears and hasn't learned the ropes regarding this county and our CSA problems.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Good morning, Mr. Segala.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable supervisors. I'd like to share something. We had a taxpayers-sponsored tea party in which we tried to do an educational work for the taxpayer toward the end of improving our situation for our citizens and the taxpayer. At the tea party, we sold these little booklets that I passed out. The Common Sense Revisited is a very interesting reading because it lays out a plan or an approach that was successful before and looks like it's needed now. And this has to do with the relationship between man and his government. We almost didn't have a free and independent America at the time of the Revolutionary War. The majority of the people wanted to stay with King George and with the bureaucracy because they understood that and they tolerated it, and they didn't want to go out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. So it looked pretty hopeless. And Thomas Paine wrote a book called Common Sense. That book was widely read by the American people. Almost overnight, or certainly within a few months, the whole character public understanding of the nature of government changed. They actually grasped the concept that government should be the servant of the people, not the other way around. This is pretty significant. That means that most of our government needs to be local. And what's little left over goes to the state, and then even less left over would go to the federal government. So the pyramid is, the base of the pyramid is the people. What's happened over the last number of years is the reverse. We've been reversing that process where now the federal government has a heavy hand in the internal affairs of our county and in our state. And so by looking at this again with some common sense, we could probably start to make changes, real beneficial changes. And this takes effect in everything that we do. The Taxpayer Association thinks that the answer to our problems is in the educational area. And so we're trying to work toward that. And not everybody agrees with everything. That's normal when you have human beings. So on the budget, one of the things that the Taxpayer Association would like to see would be a privatization study. This is where all the departments can be looked at to see if there's some departments where government would probably be more expensive than if it were contracted out. Many cities have found custodial work as an example. Quite often there's savings in contracting that out, and sometimes road maintenance. In some cases, the road maintenance, the county road maintenance would bid on the same unit of work and sometimes win. So the competition doesn't hurt. In any case, having full information and knowledge would be a good thing. And so a privatization study is really suggested, along with perhaps a Grace Commission report type approach, which also we should be recommending that the state do. The state is just horrible in its finances. It's almost crazy. On animal control, there was a previous gentleman talked about a surcharge in order to subsidize animal control where animal people would be paying for it. I suppose that's a fair type of taxation like the gas tax would be if the gas tax money were actually spent on the roads. But even looking at that, we have a lot of prisoners. It seemed like prisoners and dogs could be friends, and perhaps the prisoners can help in the animal control if the sheriff thought it appropriate. We have several things that are happening at the federal level that affect us locally and affect our taxpayers. One of them is,
Al,
I think it's HR.
excuse
5 minutes?
Well, you're about 15 or 20 seconds left.
Okay. Please oppose HR 787, navigable waters legislation. This gives the federal government, takes out the navigable waters from their influence within our county and the whole country, and allows it to have control over every creek, every stream, and maybe even your backyard. So leave navigable waters in. That prevents the federal government from intruding into the internal affairs of our county. Another one is HR 1207. It's moving along. It's audit the Fed. We have a severe problem with the Federal Reserve. We need to have those books audited. And we have political support. We need more. If you could see fit to show your endorsement of that, that would be great. And my time is up, and I'm gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al. I want to interject at this point. There's been come on up. That's fine. There's been a couple of references to what we could do to help the appearance of our grounds and maintenance and custodial work. And I do want to give, I think, some overdue accolades to our probation department. They have been using their young people on probation doing the mandated public service here. I first brought the condition of the grounds to the attention of several people, 6 months or more ago, and it has improved quite substantially, and largely due to the efforts of the people that work in the probation department. I want to thank them publicly for that. And Mr. Studley, we do empty our own trash cans. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Good morning.
Hello, I'm Lori Oliver, and I'm from Valley Springs, and I have copies of letters that I'd like to share. It was my intention when I came here to read directly from the letter, but most of you received an email from me, and I appreciate response that I got from Russ. So I'm just going to highlight on it because a lot of the things that are my concerns have already been touched on today, and there's no point in repeating those issues. I am here to speak on behalf of Ernest, a man that I came to know through my capacity as Farm Bureau Manager and the challenges of Gillum Road. That man was reachable, he was approachable, he was respectful on every level, he didn't give us the runaround, and he had a sincere interest in moving that project forward. With previous Public Works directors, we had some challenges and some difficulties, and I don't want to air public issues here at this time. So I just want to speak up on behalf of Ernest. He has done an excellent job. He has had excellent standards. It was a pleasure to work with him, and he removed all the frustration that had come from previous encounters with the Public Works Department. I think that's a valuable asset to this county that needs to be recognized. If in any way we can maintain that, we should maintain that. And I understand we're up against hard times and stuff, but I'm concerned where we will go. As you know, that road has not been completely fixed. We will, if it stays at its current capacity, be revisiting that issue within the next 2 years. And I want to make sure that we're not moving completely backwards. Obviously, we have had a definite setback. We understand that. But we need to maintain as much as we can as we move forward. Also, I would like to comment on some thoughts expressed by Marita Callaway in the last Calaveras Enterprise, where she had talked about a 4-day work week and being able to maintain services instead of stripping down the... As a citizen of Calaveras County, I am in favor of that. That is a consideration that makes good sense to me. I hope that as you guys move forward in these really difficult times, you will look at all angles, what's going to serve the people, how eliminating certain personnel is definitely going to have a detrimental effect, and if we look at their job performance, this individual deserves definite consideration to maintain him. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori. Morning, Mr. Rusk.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Darrell Rusk. I live at 101 Melcher Lane, Burson. My phone number is 772-0225. And for various reasons, I haven't been able to attend the last few meetings of the Board of Soups, and I apologize for that. I've missed you terribly. A couple of quick notes. One, there have been discussions by the public regarding options that you might follow regarding the budget, and I'm going to take a slightly different course, and that is, I commend you. I think you've already done an awful lot of those things, and every department has already done an awful lot of those things. Are there still things that could be done? Sure. There are always more things that can be done. But I know that you don't take your jobs lightly, and I appreciate you and respect you for what you do. I also want to make a questionable note, negative note. It's possible that some of the employees who are facing layoffs would like you to reconsider some of the votes regarding business applications during this past year, where, had they been approved, they might not be facing layoffs today, and you might be having a far less difficult set of tasks before you. So I commend you, but I'm sure those folks would like you to look back on some of those decisions that you've made. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell.
Good morning. My name's Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs. I had a very stressful week. I'm sorry to share with you. I'd like to do something. I didn't come to rag on you this week. I came to bring presents.
You can have mine, Tom.
Well, you don't smoke either?
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Is this a medicinal plant for pain?
You could try it.
Oh, why, thank you. You need to go back to the chart showing the organizational chart of the county, for crying out loud.
It'll just take me longer to kill than anybody else will.
Today with some special and is your cot short? Believe me, I have plenty more at home. Last week, instead of a board meeting, we decided to have Roger have brain surgery. So Roger went and had his head opened up. He had parts scooped out. They sewed him back up. And the man is walking and talking. I don't know why. It's a miracle. What can I say? I don't know that it'll ever be Roger again, but we might get something better than we had the last time they did it. Hopefully there'll be a change and for the better. When I got home, I called friends. I know you met Jeanette last month. She offered to come and sit with Roger because she says, I can come and sit with Roger because I can't do anything else anymore. I said, Jeanette, I'll let you know when he comes home. On Thursday, she had a stroke. She's passed. Her last attempt was to be a care provider. A strong woman. You should see her hands. They could have done anything. Plants. These are for Jeanette. These are ash trees. They're strong. They're tall. They're very resilient. All you have to do is water them every day for a year, and then twice a week for 2 years, and then for 5 years, twice a month, and then the rest of the time once a week. That's what I've been doing on Double Springs. The only problem I've had is when the road crew came and cut them down. But they will grow back. I want you to take these trees because they are very strong. Plant them at your house. If you need more, if you want to make a row of trees, I've got 1,000 seedlings. And the reason I gave Mr. Lawton the big seedling, I think it's 2 years, maybe 3 years, is because I did hear that he volunteered to cut his salary 10% and volunteers 10% of his time. And that's what it's going to take everyone, to, including healthcare providers, to do if we're all going to work together, because we are all in this together. I read in the paper that there's maybe some people that are reluctant to do that because it's not really going to affect anything. Those people will leave a really bad taste in our mouth if they don't volunteer to go along with what everyone else is willing to do, because it's time to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and do it. Make the cuts, make the hard choices. At least we're here to do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bonnie. Those are Modesto ash, right?
It may be Raywood.
Okay. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Ray Manley. I'm one of the old guys that one of the other gentlemen talked about. So I'm here to talk about public safety and the fact that I'm here to talk about the number one thing that the people need. Number one is to be safe. And I know there is some discussion about replacing extra hires, which I am, and having deputies come over and fill those positions. This is kind of a self-serving talk because I'm looking to protect myself and the other extra hires, but it's also a fiscal problem, a financial problem, because the Sheriff's Department is already down 5 deputies, at least 5 deputies. 2 positions were frozen last year because of the budget. My salary when I work part-time, and I'm a retired officer, retired out of the City of Pacifica after 30 years. My salary as an extra hire, if I worked my total number of hours that I'm allowed to work, would be about $23,000, $24,000. The person that you're going to bring over to replace me is costing the county about $100,000. So there is no money saving in that kind of a situation. You can say, well, we're already paying that person, we'll just reassign this task, But when you do that, you take deputies off the street because the Sheriff's Department's already down 5. Right now, you've got 3 more of them off the street working here today. And as the board knows, this room is also used as a courtroom a lot of times. And just to point out, because I've got a schedule here to point out, on Thursday, there will be have to be another deputy brought over to provide security for this courtroom. So now you've got 4 deputies, almost $400,000 here in this building when it could be $66,000. So you need to take those kinds of things into consideration because as you take people off the street, you do reduce the safety that people need. So that's all I have to say.
Your name was Manley?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Thanks for being here. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Good morning, Mr. Ballard. Captain Ballard. Of course. You're not wearing a gun today. You can come up. Thanks.
Time for the July project update for the new jail and Sheriff's Department. Things are progressing along as they should be. We completed the architectural programming with PSA Dewberry, and they are working on getting us the pre-design engineering phase submittals, hopefully tomorrow, right? Yes. And hopefully we'll be getting those tomorrow, and then we'll start on the 30% design documents on July 9th. Jeffrey's engineers completed just about everything they needed to do up there. We're working on the wetland and tree mitigation issues, and hopefully a report will be forthcoming. NGO has completed their work. We have a draft report from them today. Looks real good as far as any excavation that may need to take place on the property. And, of course, Foothills, we're still waiting their report for their cultural investigative issues that they've done up there. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to ask them or answer them. I'll ask you, too.
You showed that Measure J has been encumbered to the tune of $8,859,000 or $57,000. Are you able to give a rough breakdown of what that consists?
I'm Art Lytle with Kitchell. The 8,857,447 breaks down into...
8 million. You said 8,000.
You said 8,000.
Did I?
Yeah.
You saved money. The $8 million breaks down into $2 million that was paid to the sanitary district for connection fee and additional storage. You have $2.7 million that is for your project manager, construction manager, $3.75 million for your architect and their consultants. You also have $61,120 for topographical surveying and the mitigation issues, another $42,200 for geotechnical and foothills resources is the last
of the $2.7 million for the project manager. You're showing it as encumbered, but that won't actually be spent. That will be spent over the life of the project, and at the conclusion of the project, it will be $2.7 million. Is that correct?
Correct. When I say encumbered,
yeah, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. Okay. But I'd just like the clarification also on the architect, the $3.75 million. Does that base, it's encumbered now, but once, and I think it's like December, help me if I'm in error here, but the architectural plans are to be done sometime in November or December. Does that then complete the $3.75 million to the architect, or does the architect go beyond that?
The architect goes beyond. The architect's fees are all the way through project closeout.
Okay. Yeah, but when we actually get the plans, the architect draws up the plans that we're going to build to. That's in, I believe, November or December. How much will we have encumbered at that point to the architect?
I don't have the breakout in front of me, but it's per phases. It's like this initial phase up to 30% is like 87,000 or 100 and something thousand. Each phase is designed at a certain amount.
Okay.
I can get that information to you if you like.
Okay, maybe next time when you bring this, you might just show the phases and the projected completion dates for each phase, and how much money is allocated for each phase.
On the architectural side of it?
Yes.
Isn't that part of the documentation you gave us, the budget for us? Tom, isn't that part of
It should be, yeah, some of that's in there, but it was in the board resolution, the breakdown in each phase.
Okay, well, you might just, if you have an extra for back.
It's defined in their contract, where, for example, on the phase we're in now, it's $187,500 out of the $3.7 million.
Okay. And that takes us through December?
No, that actually just takes us through
30%.
July 8th.
Yeah, 30%.
Yes. And then your next phase, the 30%, and I don't remember the percentages off the top of my head, but 30% has another 15-20%. There's another 15-20% that is for design documents, the 50 to 100%. And then there's bidding was 3%, 15% for construction, and I think the last 5% was for project closeout.
Okay, thank you.
We'll try to do a breakdown for you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Captain Ballard, when you were here before, there was some mention of hoped for incremental increase in the AB 900 availability of those funds. Is there any new news to report on that?
July 16th, CSA will be having a meeting, and we'll be bringing it up at that meeting to ask them to consider that, to fully fund us to the small county of $30 million versus the $26 million. It's not a definite, but we're going to try to get that additional $4 million. But we won't know anything until July 16th, sir, and I'll bring it back at the next monthly update in August.
Okay. Will there be, I guess there's nothing really certain in this world anymore as far as finances and being able to depend on funds from the state, but I just hope, I want to express my own opinion about this. It looks like to me that if you hold that AB 900 funds off in a maybe file, that we may or may not get that. I mean, tell me that we are going to get it. Are we confident that we're going to get that 26 million?
In my meetings that I've had with our representatives at CSA, they've never led me to believe that we won't get them. So as long as we follow the process and get to the point to where State Public Works approves our plans, basically at that point, then it should be about as good as guaranteed we're going to get. But that's about all I can say on that.
Okay. Well, I think that my anxieties about all this are perhaps shared by other members of this board, but according to my arithmetic here, that if you take the AB 926 million off and put it in a maybe file, we've got about $21 million left of the $30 million Measure J to build a jail and whatever else we have to do, the improvements to Mountain Ranch Road and all that kind of stuff. I just implore you folks to make sure that the architects are designing within a flexible window of, it will do this county no good to design a building that we don't have the money to build. So
that issue is brought up every day.
Okay.
So every time we have the meetings, and we've done a lot of stuff to try to reduce the footprint. Some of the things that you discussed with me.
Yeah.
Multiple stories versus spreading it out, that type of thing.
Okay.
That is the topic of every meeting.
All right. Well, I imagined that it was, but I wanted to get it out here and talk about it. Any other members of the board have any comments? Supervisor Walensky.
Just a couple of questions. You are on the second page of this. You list project issues, and I'm interested in the traffic mitigation issues that you say are under discussion and reconsideration. What are we reconsidering, and what's the cause for needing to reconsider?
I'll let you handle that one.
In the neg deck that was submitted, the traffic numbers we have some concern with. They used an office building as an example of a rate for determining the number of trips to and from the site. And that's strictly for the Sheriff's Administration Building. Sheriff's Administration Building is not an office building. It has a jail prison has a different rate than what an office building does. And actually going back and looking at some of our other environmental impact reports, the rate is, in this mitigated neg deck, it was 11.91. In some of our other projects, it's been 0.11, which makes a substantial difference. Instead of 1,471 trips daily from the administration building, it drops down to 300. But some of the other concern we have has been that there's a reference to 112 people at the jail of the administration building. And that's the total staff for the Sheriff's Department. They all don't work out of the administration building or the jail. They work out of satellite stations and other locations and don't come to the jail. So the actual trip numbers that the jail and the administration building would be impacting Mountain Ranch Road, we feel is less. And we've submitted this to Tom Garcia for his consideration and a response back, and we're waiting on the response back.
Thank you. I had one other question, which is on the third bullet point on project issues, there's a reference to vernal pools and siting away from them. What percentage of the property that we've purchased has been identified as unbuildable based on vernal pool location?
I'm going to say just the front part of the property, the first 26 acres, was divided up into two separate areas, one for the courts and one for the jail project. The wetlands and the vernal pools are on the 12 acres associated to the jail project, and it reduces, by staying away from those and trying to stay away from avoidance, mitigation efforts, it reduces our 12 acres by about 2.5 acres overall that we have to absolutely stay away from. So, but there is area within that. I mean, that 12 acres was just a defined area, but there's still a lot of area within that 26 acres that's still buildable. But to truly stay away from it, and this is just a guess on my part, about 2.5, 3 acres that we need to absolutely stay away from, or spend a lot of money doing the mitigation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to ask a question on this particular item? Okay. If not, thank you very much, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're still on public comments here. If anybody else wishes to address the board this morning.
My name's Tom Thomas. I live in Mountain Ranch. I used to work for the state of California as a public safety officer fighting fire. I have dealt with your deputies, Tom Tryon, on some of his projects. The point that you guys are going to cut 17% from the sheriff's department is, in my opinion, asinine. It's hard enough to do their job, and when we need their assistance, when you cut those positions out, we have to wait. If you listen to a scanner just in the last weekend, there were numerous calls of attempt suicides, assault cases that the fire departments, not just the state, but local departments here, have to wait for sheriffs to come in and clear the scene because of firearms involved or suicide, different situations. They may have to wait 15, 20 minutes just for an officer to get there. And that's now, that's not even cutting the 17% that you guys are going to cut. I understand that the budgets are cuts. I work for the state. I know what the budgets are like. I know what you guys are having to go through. But if you cut the sheriff's department, the public safety department, you are going to get somebody killed, and that's going to be on your head. Either somebody having to wait for a sheriff to come in and dying because they're not being there. They're waiting now 15, 20 minutes sometimes to get people out there. You're going to get somebody killed, whether it's an officer, a fire person, or just one of us, the general public. And I know it's a tough road to hoe, but if you go 17% on that, it's going to be on your guys' heads. And I know that some of you are not going that way, but the ones that are going for the 17% cut for the whole sheriff's department and everything, when one of our sheriff's officers get killed, or one of the firemen get killed, or when the people die because they couldn't get in there in time, I want you to remember that it's going to be on your heads. I'm not talking, I don't know who all is involved in it, but if you keep cutting the officers down, you cut down the extra help people out here, that takes officers out of the mix, you're just cutting our own county's throat. And it's just that simple. I'm very, very straightforward and very spoken. I've worked with Tom Tryon on different projects. I've worked in Marita's district on different projects. I ran inmate crews for 18 years. I know what those people are like. Just keep that in mind when you guys go tomorrow morning for your budget. Think about it. that the more people that you take off, the more people are going to suffer. And it's just that simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Just have a question. Are the sheriff's officers willing to take a 10% cut in pay? Is that part of their negotiation?
We're currently in discussion about how we're going to
has
deal
that
with
been proposed? I'm just curious for my... You don't know?
Lonnie, we're not going to talk about negotiations here in public comments.
Anyone else wishing to address the board this morning? All right. There's another item that has been brought to the board's attention this morning that it's an item needing immediate attention. I'm going to be calling this item 9A. This has to do with the state's proposed grab on highway user tax funds, trying to take those away from the counties. So it looks like we have a couple of representatives from Public Works there. So.
I move that we have an urgency item to be considered by the board.
I second that.
It's under Government Code Section 54954.1. It requires that the board vote by 2/3 that this is an item that requires immediate attention, and that it came to the attention of the board after the preparation of the agenda. Before it's added, those findings need to be made.
Okay, does anyone need further clarification on the item or the need for discussing it? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the discussion and the ruling on this item. May I hear a vote, or asking for a vote on this approval of this, giving us the ability to consider it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So that motion passes unanimously. So we have the discussion on this item, please.
I'm Deborah Mullen from Public Works, and this, in its effort to balance its budget, the state has proposed to seize a portion of the highway users tax account, HUDA funds, or gas tax funds that go to cities and counties. And in Calaveras County, that means $1.7 million this year, $1.3 million next year, and this would have devastating effects on our road maintenance and snow removal work. So the resolution before you now is to authorize county council to join other agencies, other counties and cities in challenging the constitutionality of the seizure by the state government of these funds. And if you have questions about the impacts on Public Works, Kim Gassaway, our business administrator, knows all the numbers.
Well, I think this was discussed at budget.
It has.
I think, we've already gone over this. I just want to know who's going to be paying for county council's time.
Yeah, actually the item is for the board to authorize my office to cooperate with CSAC. That may or may not mean joining in the litigation. I suspect that the public's interests will be well represented, but in any case, I think if we're directed to cooperate, that gives us a little more flexibility in how we handle it.
Okay.
There's a motion, Marita.
I make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the resolution. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Mr. Jones, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I know. It's not my fault.
Bob's hiding behind a tree.
It's not much protection. Don't take it wrong. It's a jungle out there. Someday this will grow up to be a baseball bat.
An ash baseball bat. Oh, dear. We just had way too much fun. All right, moving on to back to the agenda, regular sequence on item number 10. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Golder Associates Incorporated for professional services for environmental monitoring at the Red Hill and Rock Creek solid waste facilities. This is also brought to us by Public Works. Good morning.
Good morning. Ron Jameson with Public Works. Under state law, we're required to perform environmental monitoring at those landfill sites. Golder has provided professional services in that regard for a number of years. We felt at this time, as their contract was expiring, it would make sense in this economic times to make sure we have the right people at the right price. So we put out an RFP. We had 30 environmental firms that received that. 10 responded. Of those 10, the selection panel unanimously determined that Golder was the top-ranking firm. We've been negotiating with them. We successfully negotiated discounted terms and also administrative fees, and so we were able to reduce the cost of what they're going to be doing if you approve this. Even though the scope of work has increased, what they'll be doing this year is actually a reduced cost for us, and they've also agreed to honor a 5-year not-to-exceed schedule, which many of the others would not do, so that's in the county's best interest. So we're recommending that you authorize the Director of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Golder to provide environmental services.
Okay, any board member having any questions for Mr. Jensen?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the discussion. I just have one question. Mr. Jensen, on page 2 of 19, under the method of payment, paragraph A, there's a discussion about additional services, and it says payment for work completed shall be made on a time and expense basis. Is that intended to give a window of opportunity for them to charge much more than the $100,000 that we're assuming that will cost per year?
No, what that's intended to do is if we have additional service, for example, if we needed to put in another monitoring well or some other thing that the water board might require, we have some funds, some contingency funds that would be outside their normal scope of work, and that would be on a time and material basis.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 11. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing the Chief Information Officer to sign a 3-year agreement with Cisco Capital for Cisco SmartNet maintenance. And good morning, Howard.
Good morning. Howard Stolman, your Chief Information Officer. During the preparation for the 09-10 budget, staff looking for ways to reduce county costs contacted our vendor supplying our Cisco SmartNet maintenance. As you well know, we use Cisco products throughout the county, both in the network and in our phone system. So we found that Cisco Capital was offering a 3-year maintenance contract. If we commit to the 3-year maintenance contract, we'll save approximately 13% in our maintenance fees. The 1-year price is $49,721 for this year. The price could vary somewhat from year to year as we add or take equipment off of the contract. If we replace it, we take it off and replace it with something else. But it will be approximately $49,721 for this year and the next 2 years if you authorize me to participate in the agreement. Any questions?
Any board member wishing to ask a question? Any board member wishing to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for approval of this resolution. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? There are none, so the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 12. This is discussion possible action approving additional term for an agreement to transfer approximately 7 acres to the Administrative Office of the Courts for the purpose of the courthouse construction, and this is brought to us by County Council. Jim, you have an explanation of this item.
Mr. Chair, this is probably Chapter 3 in our efforts to work out an agreement with the Administrative Office of the Courts, whereby we would provide property for them for their use in courthouse construction. The agreement was brought to you back on May 19th and approved, at least tentatively approved on that date by this board. In the first part of this board memo, I've tried to summarize the key points of that agreement. As has been discussed frequently, the county makes significant concessions in this agreement. Those concessions are outlined here. In general, in return for those concessions, we get the ability to have a court building co-located with the jail, which has a certain efficiency. We also get the court free. The court would move out of this building and would free up this building for the county's use. So there are significant benefits to the county, even though they can't be exactly quantified. As I said, the board approved those concessions in that agreement on May 19th. Recently, within the last few weeks, we've heard from the AOC that some additional terms, concessions, were required of the county in order for this to be approved by the Public Works Board. The second half of this board memo lists the 4 items that the AOC has told us they want added to the agreement. And I should point out that and because Lee Roberts is here, that these requirements don't come from the AOC per se. That we're told that the Department of General Services has required that the AOC make these additions, these changes to the agreement. I noticed Lee carrying a motorcycle helmet in this morning, so I knew there was a reason why I liked Lee, but I don't want him to take the heat necessarily for requesting these changes. But on the other hand, from the county's point of view, it doesn't really matter which bureaucracy requires the changes. They are being required of us. Of the four concessions, the first two I think are the most significant. You'll recall that we agreed to provide utility service to the court property. The notion being that we would eventually need to provide utilities to the jail, and so it made sense for the county to build out to the new property line the court's utility service. After some discussion, it made sense that there be some delay in making those utilities available because they wouldn't be needed by the AOC until well into the AOC's construction phase. And so we agreed on a fairly arbitrary 9-month period. The original agreement that you approved said that we would make utilities available 9 months after the inception of the AOC construction, the agreement being that might be about the time that the AOC would actually, that the need would come online for the AOC. We're now requested to change that and have the utilities available at the construction date of the commencement of the courthouse construction. The practical effect is that the utilities would need to be installed at a time when they would not be needed, would not be used by the AOC. The second requirement has to do with a variety of mitigation measures that the county has taken on in order to complete the environmental work on the property. Probably the most significant of these has to do with obtaining a seasonal wetlands clearance, which is something that the county needs to work on but is not within the county's power to grant. We work with the federal bureaucracy, and it takes however long it takes to obtain that clearance, that 404 permit, without regard to the due diligence on the part of the county. The request in this new document says that if the county is unable to obtain that clearance, in other words, if the AOC's construction phase is delayed because of our inability to obtain that clearance, then the county would be obligated to reimburse the AOC for its specified costs. And these are substantial costs. They're title fees, appraisal charges, due diligence inspection. Those are probably not substantial, but surveys and design expenses could be very substantial expenses. So under this new agreement, the county would be obligated to reimburse the AOC for those costs if there's an inadvertent failure or inability on our part to obtain the wetlands clearance. The third request is that we, if we're unable to complete the utility and the road infrastructure to the building, the AOC would be able to complete that work at the county's expense. So this request came to my attention about a week or so ago, 10 days ago. We were asked at that time to present it to you for your consideration. It's, as you note from my memo, it's not something that I feel I can recommend to you. It's hard to understand how you can justify imposing these obligations. But again, it's part of the overall picture, the overall, the big deal, which is the question of the convenience of having the court located near the jail and all the other things that we've discussed. In the last few days, Mr. Lawton and I have discussed the status of this agreement with Lee Roberts. He suggested that we put this on hold. I assume, and he can speak for himself, but I assume so that we can have further discussions to see what other options there may be. So we're left with, I guess, the unusual circumstance of leaving this on the agenda for your consideration, for your possible approval, which would, I guess, make the whole issue moot if you decide to approve it today. If the inclination of the board is not to approve these things, I think the idea is that it would be better to not enter a formal disapproval in the record, to let the staff go back, have further discussions, and see what other approaches might be made to resolve these issues. So I guess that's the background as far as I understand it. Lee may have a different take on it, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Supervisor Walensky.
I've got a couple of questions about where we are in the process. The memo we have on this says that changes could be requested by 3 state departments. We have Public Works, General Services, and Finance. This appears to be just the Public Works aspect of this coming to light. I'm wondering whether we could expect 2 more iterations of this, or whether there's some venue in which we can understand the full state interest and try to get this.
What we're told is that this agreement with these changes has been approved by the Department of General Services, and that it will go to the Public Works Board on that board's consent agenda, implying all that implies, that it would be approved without difficulty. I can't tell you that I'm familiar with the process. That's what we've been told, though.
And Finance as well would be included in the go-ahead.
Good morning. ladies and gentlemen. Lee Roberts with Administrative Office of the Courts, formerly with Department of General Services. Department of General Services is the arbiter for the Public Works Board, and the Administrative Office of the Courts makes an application to the Public Works Board that is screened and reviewed by Department of General Services. I wish to apologize to the board here for bringing this change to light at this time. When you considered it in May, it was my full understanding that had already been vetted by the Department of General Services, and we were very disappointed to learn just a week ago Friday that there was this last minute and rather significant change to the agreement. Mr. Lonsky, just for you to answer your question, it is understood right now by everyone that we can speak with at the Department of General Services that this is their last position on this. And we appreciate the County Council and Mr. Lawton's efforts to get this on the agenda so quickly, trying to salvage our Public Works Board meeting of August 14. And I think just to give a bit of perspective from the Department of General Services side is their objective is to minimize risk to the state money for this project. And if we look historically, they consider that the original offer from the county of Calaveras was for equity exchange for the parcel adjacent to the library, and that was right next to Mountain Branch Road. The consideration here is that in the switch to the jail site, that there were a fair amount more contingencies and uncertainties that came with that change. And their objective now is to minimize the risk by assuring that, or trying to ensure that if the jail project does not go through for some reason, that the state would not then be in the position to simply have lost the money spent in the good faith effort of designing for that site. And that is and so the moving the utility completion date up to the start of construction is a way of protecting the construction funds, so that we would not get 9 months into construction and to learn then that the utilities would not be in place, and then all of that hard cost construction money would be lost. So the change of the date to completion of utilities to the time of construction is intended to protect construction funds. The other conditions that Mr. Jones described are to recoup the design phase costs that would be lost if the jail project were not to go through.
Let me ask whether any of this has anything to do with the Department of Finance or any other state agency's view of the certainty of AB 900 funds coming through to this county.
I don't believe it does, because we've had there are other court projects that plan to be built on land that is offered as equity exchange in the same way that the county is offering to the AOC this site as part of the transfer process, and so some of the exchange agreements are a little bit complex. They have various contingencies in them. Department of General Services is getting a little bit more cautious about what sort of exchange agreements they will authorize. It's been we've tried to make the case that the county has demonstrated good faith and intention all the way along in working to make this site available and doing everything within their means to do so. Unfortunately, it's a rather conservative review agency that we're working with, and about the action on your action on this proposal before you. I would suggest that if you are not inclined to, for whatever reason, to support this, that you would put it off for further consideration. I don't think that, I don't know that a thumbs down here is going to be helpful, but I think that what would be helpful would be to, if there were a counter proposal, a counter offer, some description of what it is that is most unpalatable, that would be helpful for continued discussion on the matter.
What's the timing? You have a meeting on the 14th of August. When do you need some formal agreement? Is there any kind of prior to the 14th need?
Well, actually, the date that is scheduled for that this is on the agenda for this Friday for the Public Works Board, and the only way that we save that time slot is through an approval by this board here today. Otherwise, we are off till it would be August 14 would be the next Public Works Board date. Right. And I can't represent to you that is that is extremely detrimental to our project. I would not try to impose an artificial.
Mr. Chair, there are a couple of points that should be made here. It's clear the reason behind these changes is quite clear. It's intended to avoid risk on the part of the AOC. I can respect that. But the result is to impose that risk on the county. In particular, the issue of the seasonal wetlands clearance, the AOC is welcome to obtain that clearance if they can do it faster than the county can. But there is no way in my mind that you can justify imposing the development risk on the county for the state's funds. We both stand in the shoes of developers on this project. There are risks involved in being a developer, and those are risks that I fail to see can be shifted to the county. So clearly the goal here is to shift the risk. I think it's up to the board to decide whether that's agreeable or not. The other point that needs to be made, and we hear a comparison between these problems and the speculation that there would be no similar problems had we gone ahead with the library site, that would have been a smooth road, problem-free. That I just have to point out that's just speculation. The road impact issues would be exactly the same. The traffic issues to Mountain Ranch Road would be exactly the same. We would, in the absence of an environmental review of that site, it's hard to know for sure what problems we might have encountered there. I think it's not a fair comparison to say that this property is chock full of problems, whereas the other location would not have been. Maybe it would have been better, maybe not, but this is the road we've chosen to take. So those are my comments. I think that I've made it very clear to Lee and to the AOC that I would not be able to recommend these changes. I mean, I'm certainly welcome to have further discussions, and would appreciate guidance from the board as to what might be acceptable.
Okay, well, I have some fairly strong notions about this, but I'd like to hear from other board members.
Mr. Roberts, I got a couple questions. Just from some of the discussion, with them not wanting to take any risk, I assume they have done nothing as far as design. There's no dates, there's no schedule, there's not anything until we have an agreement with them, then they'll proceed. Is that correct?
Well, I manage the work of our design team, and we've taken a good look. There's been a fair amount of design activity already. It is not like we are waiting this. If that is your question, no. We're proceeding right now as if we are going to have an agreement here shortly. And we're trying to preserve a construction start date that is shortly after the jail project would start. I believe that the last I recall for the jail start date is somewhere about a year from right now. And we'd be looking at roughly the fall, maybe September or October for construction start. So our intention, once we have an agreement in place, is to continue at the pace that we've been going, which is a pretty good clip.
None of that scheduling is on paper, though. There's no, like the jail committee that we have presented us with.
No, I'm sorry I did not present that to you here, but we have schedules very similar to that. And unfortunately, it's been hard to, our schedule has been something of a moving target. It's associated with the complexities of this acquisition, this exchange agreement that we've our dates. It's basically we have roughly a year and a few months from whenever we have approval.
Well, the way this is written here, it doesn't have a start date or no sooner than date in here for us to pay for all of these requirements if we don't have utilities to the site prior to your construction.
Yes,
so you could walk in next week and say, we're ready to start.
Yes. No, and the exchange agreement addresses that by establishes a construction start date. And Jim, if you have that handy, I think it's October. And there is also an early notice feature either in the exchange agreement or in the memo of understanding that's incorporated into the exchange agreement that protects against that very thing, that there's a minimum period in which we can say that we are just about there.
You know the section offhand?
No, I'm sorry.
I'll find it.
Any more comments? No?
Not this time.
Supervisor Callaway?
On the land issue on 2 title fees appraisals, I thought part of that was done. Is this then a moving target? So if the land doesn't, if escrow doesn't close by August 1st, it then has to be reappraised? I wasn't clear on that.
This refers to costs that have already been incurred by the state for title insurance, for title fees, appraisal charges.
So
all things being equal, they would bear these costs. This is a provision which would shift those costs to us if we're unable to complete our mitigation measures.
if we what, Jim? I'm sorry.
If we're unable to complete the mitigation work that is imposed on us by the agreement.
Okay. On if the courts went back to the library site, is it that here's the site, you now have to do your own EIR? I mean, what's the trade-off? I mean, if they keep throwing it back and we said, okay, go back to the library site, what do we have to do? We shouldn't have to do anything then, right? Here's the land.
We would have to identify the acreage that would,
right.
The specific parcel that would go to the court.
But we don't have to do an EIR?
I don't know. Janice could comment on the extent of the environmental work. It may not be necessary for that site.
But assuming they're going to have to do something, be it an EIR and mitigate a negative deck, who pays for that? The county or the courts? We're just saying we'll have land for you.
Well, I guess that's again the problem of making the comparison. We have this very amorphous, not really agreement, but an understanding, historical understanding, that land would be made available at the library site. Okay. I don't know that anybody has specified how much land, where. There are a lot of questions that would need to be answered, and would be and could be answered in a spirit of cooperation, just as we've tried to show with the current project. But there's a lot of uncertainty in that historical understanding.
Okay. The infrastructure AB 900 pays for infrastructure from the property line to the facility. So getting it to the property line will be paid for under Measure J, not AB 900.
I don't know that I'm prepared to say which funds can be used for which part of it.
If I remember, Eddie, is that not the case? AB 900, it pays for infrastructure from the property line to the facility, not getting it to the property line?
Correct. There was a portion of Measure J, $10 million to assist us in jail, sheriff's office infrastructure needs.
Okay, but that's to the jail, to the sheriff's office, that's separate. AB 900 pays, though, from the property line to the jail.
Yeah.
The Measure J would pay for it to the property line and or to the sheriff's facility if we have it. So if we're right next to the parcel that goes to the courts, then that we take the infrastructure to the court's property line. The courts then pay from the property line to the courts. Is that right, Mr. Robert?
That's correct.
So it sounds like to me that there's a pretty good deal here for the courts. I mean, I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. I can understand the state wanting to minimize the risk, but unless the state wants to give us more state money and we can play the shell game and it under AB 900 to help subsidize some of this, I do not support using any more of the county's resources, i.e. money, to make these changes, especially for the wetlands. I do not support having the infrastructure to the property line for the courts unless that's convenient with the way we do the construction for the jail. Yes.
And I need to correct myself. I think I said $10 million. It's only $6 million of Measure J was associated to infrastructure.
Right.
Just $6 million.
Okay. But that just goes to the property line. It doesn't. I think AB 900 pays for it from the property line to the facility.
AB 900 will pay from the building 50 feet out. So
50 feet out.
Yeah. Right. So if there's from the property line to the building another 200 feet, that's county cost.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Callaway, if I may, the provision of utilities to the property line is a provision to simulate a parcel that has street frontage, which would typically be the type of parcel that Department of General Services sees, and the fact that this is set back from the main road brought a host of issues to play. The most recent one that you heard, the last edition, was for a dedicated easement from Mountain Ranch Road to the parcel. So the provision of utilities to the property line by the county is a necessary feature of the agreement in that the way that our project is funded, we would rely on adjacent utilities. We would be prepared to go to the property line however we had to, and to make the connections in the street. That is part of a typical budget. But to take utilities, say, 500 yards or something of a road would have to be a special line item.
Okay, I understand. So if, for some reason, that the jail does not go forward at the same time the court does, the county is obligated to bring the infrastructure to the property line for the courts.
Under this agreement, yes.
Under the current agreement.
Well,
I meant,
before they
so
start
if we don't, if the jail for some reason doesn't go forward or the timelines don't match and the court becomes the head of the jail, we're still then obligated to bring it to the property line within 9 months.
it has to be
Correct.
there.
Yes, correct.
Correct. I mean, they're asking for it before they put in a shovel, but I'm just going back to what's currently existing. Okay, so we're obligated for that.
Well, this board has tentatively approved that agreement.
No, I understand that, Jim.
All right.
I guess asking, the question is giving staff a little bit of wiggle room, and I support giving you a little wiggle room, but very, very little wiggle room.
Supervisor Walensky?
We've got to plant another tree.
You asked for specifics on this from us, and I'll give you my take on it. First is, I'm not prepared to vote for this right now and in its current condition ever. But I do encourage the parties to use this next week or two to revisit some things. There's some irony, as you might imagine, observed from this perspective. When the state gives us $4 to $5 million of ambiguities in everything we do, and then comes to us and asks for absolute certitude on this particular circumstance. I'm trying to contain my sense of
Fair
sense of just. I'm trying to find a nice word, but it just is galling to me that we're in this discussion while this other stuff continues in its irresponsible form in Sacramento. That said, I do care about our courts, and I do want this project to succeed, and I do think there's a benefit to have it co-located with our prospective jail. So what I would ask people to do is go back to the state and find some kind of equitable approach. I'm certainly open to some flexibilities, as Marita's talking about, in terms of the timing of the utilities. If we're obligated anyway, it seems to me the timing might benefit us to get it done earlier than later if inflation ever takes off again, and there may be a little bit of even cost savings for us to do it earlier. I don't know. But one question I do have is, how certain are we of what exact utilities are needed? And do we have a plan that is certain enough for us to know that what we would do before you set up would be the same thing as what we would do after there's a clear plan? And I'm very unsure of that.
I would invite Art Lytle to come up and comment on the effect of that change.
They can have a temporary power pole.
I'm not done with my position.
When the time comes, I would invite Art to come up.
All right, but I do want to finish my
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I have absolutely no willingness to take on the risk of a developer for another project when we don't have control over things. So, for instance, the vernal pool, the environmental stuff, especially since a lot of it involves state agency approvals as well as, I would imagine, some federal input, that's just a non-starter for me. And I don't even understand why that's in this discussion. And to take on additional risks, we've already committed ourselves to a considerable expense out of our funds, and it strikes me that I have no flexibility on the other matters. It's only about the timing of the utilities, and that's completely dependent on the answer this gentleman, I guess, is about to give us.
Well, our present schedule shows starting construction July 2010. And the start of construction is site clearing, then getting into rough grading and utilities. We would probably be looking at the end of the year for utilities going in, and depending on our weather and how good our weather is at that point, whether or not we can get them in. With what I read in here, we virtually would have to take the road work and the site utilities and break it out as a separate package. And that would have to be done now to virtually get it out on the street, get it bid, get a contractor, and start construction so that it's complete substantially complete November of 2010. That also presents some problems with, when you put a package out early, the coordination with what trails behind it. And at this point, we're still looking into what is the best way, for example, to run the sanitary. Right now, the sanitary crosses the creek just the other side of Government Center Drive. That sewer is above the creek right now. The erosion has gone underneath the sewer, and it presents some problems with Department of Fish and Game with us going through that. So we're looking at other avenues where we can get into the sewer. For example, out close to Mountain Ranch Road over here, is it deep enough that we can go underneath there and tie into the sewer without impacting the creek and getting Fish and Game involved? So there's some issues that we still haven't fully resolved yet, and when we get our pre-design engineering reports, we'll have a better idea of what our options are and how to move forward. But for us to do it right now could be opening up a whole bunch of problems.
Can you imagine something besides the 9-month language, which also seems a little arbitrary and hard to coordinate? Is there some flexible language that meets the needs of both projects that could be different than the 9-month clause?
Well, I was pretty pleased with that. Because if for some reason there's a delay, we don't get out to bid when we're supposed to, and it still gave us a cushion to be able to deliver what we needed to deliver for the AOC and their project to proceed and not have an impact on it. It makes me nervous right now giving up part of that time. That probably doesn't make Lee happy, but at the same time, I've got to look at the county's best interest and how do we protect the county if something happens, we have to rebid this project, whatever, do we have time to do that? Not that I want to rebid, I want to do it once and only once, but there are times that you're forced to do certain things twice or something gets delayed. We're still at this point moving the building around on the site, and where's the best place to put it? And, that's takes time to do that also.
Any other questions?
Well, Jim reminded us that Mr. Roberts is just the messenger and not to beat him up.
He has a helmet.
Oh, that's right, he has the helmet.
I do have a question. Mr. Lawton points out to me something I missed. There are actually two different construction dates in this document, and in paragraph 2.2, we say June 5th, 2010, and then the new language, which was added last week, the start date is November 2010. Can you clarify that, which it is?
I would have to say that that's simply a mistake.
Which is the date?
It would be the later. It would be the later.
So the later is the mistake, or the later is the one that's right?
Sorry. The current start date is the October or November.
It says November 2010.
November.
Right, so the June thing is out.
Well, the June date was prior to us even putting the shovel in the ground, which what I was...
Okay, Supervisor Tryon.
I'll give my comments. They're very similar to Steve's. Let me go over the second point here of this reimbursement of costs. I don't think the county in any way can position itself to start reimbursing costs for events that are not county-inspired. Even if they are county-inspired, I don't see how we're going to reimburse costs. We don't have the financial capability of doing that. So I don't know how we can put a contract together that would basically be something that we probably couldn't perform on. When it comes to the first one in the infrastructure and the time required, I voted for the one that's currently in place, and I did it with great reservations over the infrastructure because basically we're putting two facilities up there, and the county's paying almost the entirety of the infrastructure cost. The courts are not paying a fair share of the infrastructure cost to bring the infrastructure to the site. And you had mentioned, well, if it's 500 feet away and more than the 50 feet from the building, that would require another line item. I think we should enter into negotiations and get another line item and some additional money to have the courts pay their fair share, based on capacity or traffic or something, rather than the county just saying we're going to pay for the whole thing.
May I, Mr. Tyron, we actually, the agreement does account for the AOC to pay for the upsizing, the enlarging of any of the infrastructure that has to be installed. That is, if a 6-inch line would have served the jail, but a 10-inch line is needed for both facilities, that the state would pay for the increase of that pipe size. Now, that may not even be considered a fair share, in that the county still pays for trenching and installation, but there was a gesture made towards that.
I mean, if we have to have a 20% bigger pipe, it seems to me the courts should pay for 20% of the trenching and everything of providing the infrastructure, and we haven't touched on roads, and I don't think the courts are, correct me if I'm in error, but I think on the traffic mitigation, the courts are getting basically a free ride. Is that not?
No, the agreement you approved imposed on them an obligation to pay their fair share of traffic mitigation. The only unusual feature is that it's capped at $500,000, what appears to be a very conservative limit, but it's a limit of $500,000.
Okay. Well, I'm not for the changes that are here. Number one is we can't start reimbursing you for delays, even if they are our own fault. And having to spend all this money on infrastructure, I mean, even if you're over at the library, we still have to pay the sanitary district for all the capacity expansion and all those sort of things, because they basically had a moratorium on, even if the library's in the district. I mean, we still have to pay millions to the sanitary district, regardless of whether it's in or out. The only additional cost up here, if the library site is in, is really the annexation cost, which I don't think will be controversial or particularly expensive.
I think that's done.
That is done. So, all the other costs are basically the same to get the sanitary district to take, one more unit, let alone a court and a jail and a sheriff administrative building. So, it seems to me the courts already have a heck of a deal. I don't know how they can expect another ounce of blood out of the county, because we don't have it in this environment. So those are my thoughts.
Any other comments?
Just that there's no intention or desire right now to go back to the library site. I mean, the jail, the court is proposed on the site with the jail for some very good reasons. We've done some very good work getting to that point. The only reason for bringing that up in today's discussion was to give, I think, perspective, whether it's whether how helpful that turns out to be, but from where the DGS might be coming from in their suggestion of a risk analysis. So we're very excited about the prospects of being on that site. Very appreciative of the board's continuing focus on this matter, and we're still dedicated to finding a solution.
Okay. I have a couple of questions here for you, Mr. Roberts. In most negotiated agreements, there's some good parts for one party and some good parts for the other. There's a reciprocal format, sort of. What would happen, just hypothetically, if we we fronted the money, put in these utilities as specified in this modified agreement, before you ever put a shovel in the ground, and then something were to happen beyond your control where the court never got built. I mean, I would expect that if you want us to pin this kind of an obligation on our part, that there would also be a reciprocal clause where if your court goes away, that we get reimbursed for the extra costs that we had to incur, whether that's improper timing. We heard Mr. Lytle say that this doing it this way would cause us to have to advertise the bids for that amount of work or that portion of the work prior to the usual and customary timing. So there'd be a cost associated with that. I absolutely emphatically would not sign this agreement without having additional language that protects us if you guys go away. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you're excited about having the jail and the courts in close proximity to each other. Can you expand on that a little bit? Tell me, because of some information that was shared with me last week about how the wetlands is virtually going to separate the courts and the jail a good deal farther than I've ever imagined them being separated. Have you been made aware of that condition?
No, sir, I don't know. I know that the objective is still that there be a grade or walking distance connection between the two buildings, and don't know of any information that would make that impossible. And the reason for the excitement, I think, is that it's a lovely site. There are some operational efficiencies which may not rise to the level of exciting, but just from a planning perspective, it's a nice site to build on.
Okay. And I have another question for Mr. Lytle. Your contract, of course, or your company's contract is with the county to represent us, and this may very well have happened already, but I'm visualizing some immense benefits that would occur in a one-day design charrette where we would have our designers along with the court designers just to sit down, for 4 hours or 6 hours, so that everybody knows where the utilities are. I mean, you're talking about the sewer line crossing the ditch up here, and that's going to cause a problem. Maybe their designers are not aware of that. I just think that it's in our all collective best interest to have everybody literally on the same page on this design problem. It's not in anybody's interest to have a design team designing a jail and a sheriff's administration center, and with a wall of information or an information restricted wall between another design team over here. Wouldn't most people agree that there should be some integration in that effort? And I'm not saying.
And I agree with you 100%. What we have been doing to date is the investigation portion of where are the utilities, what are the loads that are attached, what's the spare capacity, and what do we need to do to get it up to close proximity to both our projects, to serve both our projects. And there will be meetings with the AOC as well as with county people as we march forward and we get into the design of these different utilities and infrastructure.
Okay.
I don't want to give the impression that we're not going to communicate with the administrative office of the courts. We will be. And we actually have been exchanging information.
Okay. Dewberry as well, right?
Yes. When I say we, I'm talking about the county, our design consultants, Kitchell, right, as well as the administrative office of the courts and their design teams.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments about this?
Just make a brief
couple of historical comments. I'm looking around the room and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm the old person with respect to this project. There's a few of us here, but first of all, with respect to the current requests that have been made, I don't support those myself. It's embarrassing to come and have to ask you to make those assurances. Supervisor Thomas, I think you brought up a good point as far as reciprocal assurances, and I think that the board and county council should consider that as part of your alternative language. I think there are some processes going on, maybe that don't even have to do with our project, between Department of General Services and the Administrative Office of the Courts. And I think perhaps we might be suffering a little bit from that. And I think we might have to pursue, we'll go through the appropriate process and follow those channels, but we may have to consider other channels and maybe the political process as well. And I think those are things we should all be talking about if we can't get this through the standard channels. That being said, there are a few things I think I'd be remiss, because many of us, Lee included, he's relatively new to our project. But I do feel it's important to kind of remind everyone historically how we got to this project and these representations that the county would do a lot of this infrastructure. Originally, we were slated for the library site, and we can all agree that that was a very broad offer to provide the library site, and there were no specifics ever hammered out, because before we ever got to those specifics, the county approached the AOC and the court and had the idea of the new property. At that time, we were vehemently opposed because we knew it would significantly delay our project, and it has delayed our project almost 18 months. But we wanted to continue to be good county partners, and the AOC and the courts continued to express their concerns with respect to the property, that it was very rural, unimproved property. And we received assurances from the county that because they were doing these other projects, regardless of whether or not they went, they were planning to build on this property notwithstanding, and they would put in these improvements. I think we've all been remiss that we are hammering out the details at this late date. But there were those representations, and that is kind of how we got here. And now we are hammering out those details. But I don't want us to forget that we find ourselves in this situation out of representations that have been made along the way. And while it looks like the courts are getting a great deal out of it, and I'll agree, we are. But it was based on the representations of the county that you wanted this project, you wanted us to go up with the jail. We certainly saw the benefit of that. We took the risk to delay our project so that we could work cooperatively, and we continue to try to work cooperatively. Like I said, we've now got the state involved, and I'm not here to advocate for their position in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to bring up that history, that this wasn't an out-of-the-blue demand of the state from the get-go. It was a process. And in order for us to continue to move with where the county wanted us to go, the county did make representations in the past, and that's kind of how this has evolved. Now we're putting pen to paper and really cutting out the details of those representations. And I don't fault you for advocating strongly for your position. I just didn't want us to lose the history of how we got here.
There's also the fact that the state took over the courts. If the courts would like this building and no new courthouse, I'm sure we could make that part of the negotiations too. So I meant that was all of those things were coming together when the state took over the courts. And then we decided the studies showed that, we would need a new court because we need a new jail. So it wasn't just the county saying, okay, we'll give you the land. Discussion was made, and that the courts can stay here and the county would go elsewhere. So that had been part of the discussion. So, we can go back in time, or we can say, this is where we are now, and how do we move forward?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. For those who were not here, we did have representations when we were approached to change the location to the new property. At the time, we didn't see how it would be possible because of the time delays, and there were representations made, and everything that was raised by the AOC and the courts, the county indicated that it was their intent to put all of this into place. like I say, I think both sides were remiss in not getting that documented in the detail at the time those representations were made. But that is how we kind of got here, and that's all I'm trying to point out, is when we made that switch to the new property, there were representations made at that time. Unfortunately, we're just now hammering out those details, but that is how it evolved, and that's all my point is. So.
Well, I'm glad the courts do not think that we should give anything more to the state. So I appreciate those comments.
Well, we do appreciate it. You know, I think where we need to go is proposing the alternative language. And like I said, I think you guys have made some excellent points, and I think that needs to go back to them.
Okay, do any board members have any further questions of staff? Mr. Rusk is standing back there. Since we're spending his money, I'm going to open up the public comment on this item. Did you hear me say we're spending your money?
Actually, I was going to compliment you each on insightful comments and very good suggestions, and I would like to support them. I would like to endorse the idea that sometimes jumping in the boat in case of an emergency still requires somebody to make sure there are oars in the boat. Right now, you're the ones in charge of making sure the oars are in the boat. So I trust you more than I trust someone from 90 miles away, or 1,000 miles away, or 3,000. And under the current circumstances, allocating a week or 2 weeks for the parties to get back together and resolve some of these questions and iron out any potential differences on design criteria, I think now is the time to do it, not 3 years from now. So, yes, I encourage you and endorse what you've been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Rusk. Okay, I'm going to close the public portion of this and bring it back to the board. You have a question?
Jim? Outside of wanting direction from the board, when is this coming back? And in August? I really wasn't clear in listening to you, Mr. Roberts.
The timing of this process has been driven by the AOC. We've tried to be responsive to their needs. Hopefully we have. So it's really up to them as to where they are on going to the Public Works Board and how soon they can make that happen. I'm available
just curious.
At any time.
Thank you.
Supervisor Walensky.
I guess with regards to this, we have a question of whether to reject or simply extend, and my proposal would be to extend some time for parties to meet, but also I think in that period of time to take up Mary Beth's suggestion that the solution here may not be administrative in relation to the state, that we may need to rely on our state representatives to put some equitability and sense to this. So I don't know where that comes in the process or how much time would be needed, but I'd suggest that we try to meet the August 14th meeting time for the DPW.
I don't ask for a deadline. In fact, I don't want one. If the board takes no action today, we can go from there based on the comments you've made.
All right. I move, therefore, to take no action on this today.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to take.
I'm not voting because we're not taking action.
I think we just conclude the discussion and go on to the next item. Would be good to take.
But I insist on voting on something. So.
You guys, go ahead.
Let's take a poll.
You can do it either way.
No, in all seriousness, I think that we need to
Let's continue this to a date certain, 1 month from today.
All right, Chair.
That we could poll on.
That's a motion.
That's a motion.
If I had a second.
To table it for 1 month?
Okay, the previous motion has been withdrawn, and we have a new motion, as I understand it.
That's correct.
Okay, a new motion, the desire to continue this discussion. I'm I think that we have had various people express reservations about putting their signature on the existing document. So there should be the communication going back to the Office of the Courts or to the Public Works Administration ought to be that we're not happy with signing this. Okay, we have a second on the motion to...
It'll be August 4th, I think.
Whenever you want to bring it back, Jim.
Well, that's not the motion.
Well, I mean, just leave it open-ended to whenever he wants to bring it back. This is not
There's no harm in having a report in 30 days.
The maker of the motion said a date certain, and I think that was August 4th. Is that your intent?
That's correct. I think it makes sense to get an update at that time.
To get a report on it.
Necessarily
Yeah.
concluded.
Okay.
I think that makes sense too, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to item number 13, we have a review of correspondence, reports of various matters of concern. Can we start with Supervisor Callaway today?
I have Council of Governments this week, possibly Domestic Animal Advisory Committee. I am going to be working the death ride on Saturday, and I'm assuming budget hearings start at 1:30 tomorrow. That's what I asked for the last time we met. And that was
So are we
agreed
starting
to.
at 1:30 or 9 a.m.?
Well, if it's at 9, I will not be here. I had asked when we met last time for it to be at 1:30. I confirmed it with Madeline and Karen that was what was in the minutes. So if the board chooses to do it
1:30 is
earlier, I will not be here.
Okay.
That's tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's agree on a start time. I
That's
don't mind.
what I had asked for.
That's what I thought we were
I thought it was going to be in the morning, and have committed myself to be in Sacramento with the Air Quality
Okay.
Resources Board at 2.
Well,
Is it-
Madeline, what was it that was in the minutes?
It was the afternoon.
At 1:30. Okay, the board chooses, I will not be here.
When is it posted? Has it been public notice posted for 9 o'clock?
Not exactly. We included in your agenda that this, it's all continuation of the original budget deliberations, and that this board may continue those discussions to tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
But I had asked in
continue
our
at any-
budget meeting for 1:30, and that had been agreed to.
My only point is you can continue it however you want to continue it.
Marita, with all due respect, I don't remember any conclusive...
Would you like me to get the tape?
Sure.
Mr. Thomas,
Yeah.
Madeline's notes?
No,
can
we
get
did
it on
agree to
your-
1:30.
But, I mean, that's fine. Steve can't make it tomorrow afternoon. I can't make it in the morning. I will not be here.
Well, I think we should discuss this and try to figure out how we can
What time
accomplish
do you
this
meet in
together.
Sacramento?
What time can you meet?
Supposed
Maria? Is it 1:30 is the
Well,
earliest?
yeah, by the time I could maybe noon.
Or you could.
I think it depends on...
If you wanted to go to Thursday.
Pardon?
No, I'm getting out of here. Gone.
I think it depends on Steve in Sacramento and what time his schedule shows him being there.
I'll try to make some calls.
Want
and
to do
see.
Thursday?
Tom says he's...
Tom says he
no.
can't make it, so
Okay.
I will try to call the air quality. This is a pretty important meeting, and I've been
Okay.
trying to get it for about 4 months, but
All
I will
right,
try
that's
to
fine.
switch
You
it
all
up.
meet tomorrow morning. I will not be here.
Oh, wait,
Well,
that's,
that's not, we all need to meet together
Well,
for
I
something that's
cannot,
significant.
and I
so-
made it real clear last week, so that's fine. It's just preliminary
time's your meeting?
budget.
2
Your meeting's at 2,
in Sacramento,
and it'll last how long?
about 2 hours.
So you could be here at 5.
Yes.
I have council of government.
COG has a room tomorrow.
Tom and I both have council of COG at 6:30.
So if you want to make it 5, that's fine. It's not going to take that long to...
When do you leave on Thursday?
Well, I don't know. It's up to Denise. I just told her I'd be done tomorrow night after the COG meeting. We had a budget meeting, and she could make plans. Two of what we do. But, I mean, if you have to go to Thursday, then we can go to Thursday.
Could we go real early in the morning Thursday, get it out on time?
I can't make it Thursday morning until 9:30 or so.
Okay.
Well, we can just discuss.
It's just the preliminary budget. If a board member cannot be here, that's just the way it is.
All right, let's do it on this basis. If in fact the board last time said 1:30, if that is what the tapes and record shows, let's do it at 1:30. If that is not the case, if it's ambiguous, then the posted 9 o'clock would seem to be appropriate.
We all said 1:30.
Well, I don't recall that decision was made. In fact, I don't recall even discussing it.
Well, let's rather than try to decide something that's not before us right now, let's ask the clerk to ascertain the level of commitment we made to the 1:30 time, and if that's not in the record, let's rely on the time we posted.
Let's just make it Thursday if we all need to be here. What time can we all be here? What's the earliest Thursday morning?
9:30.
Okay, let's just meet at 9:30 Thursday. Does that screw up this thing says?
No, you've met your Brown Act, your agenda requirements. This is a continuing item from several weeks ago, actually. It's just carried on the agenda. This was just a notice for convenience to alert people that it may be continued.
Okay.
Now, is this OI room going to be open?
Where we
on
meet,
Thursday?
that's the question.
Or is it going to be
Since
here?
I never get the right place unless it's here.
Court will be here Thursday, yeah.
The library.
You let us know. Make an appointment. Find out and let us know before we leave today. We will post it. Have Michael call around, find out what's available.
Okay, does it suit everybody to change it to 9:30 on Thursday?
Okay.
That, Marita, you okay with that?
What?
That's what I'm trying to define.
Tentatively final. It's like a tentative preliminary budget.
Supervisor Toffenall, you okay?
Hell, I don't know. I'm going back to Hawaii. I can't take it anywhere.
So
I will be at the FEMA meeting.
No, I want to finish this. You're okay with 9:30?
Yeah, I'm fine with 9:30 on Thursday.
Supervisor Walensky, you're fine?
Yes.
And Tom Tryon, I can be here then. Okay.
I think one of the things you should do, though, is schedule a closed session prior to the discussion where we can discuss the results of the labor discussions.
I think
we're not going to know that today. We're not going to know it until Thursday. And so I think that should be the first thing on the agenda where we can discuss the results, whatever they are, and any response the board wishes to make to them, and then go into public session on the budget.
Well, you have a closed session on that subject scheduled for today, which should be continued to whenever the board meets again.
Because we're not going to have answers today. And that's the way the motion was last week, because I asked for that. I said, make sure we have a closed session prior to the budget deliberation so we can discuss the consequences of labor discussions.
So we have closed session item 16 today, which will be continued at 9:30 a.m. Thursday.
There you go.
Prior to an open session on the budget.
Yes.
Which will start as soon as the closed session is over. Is that?
That's correct. That's what I support.
All right, now for logistics purposes, the Sequoia room is not a very adequate place for a closed session. So
we could have the closed session in Jim's conference room and then
go over.
Does that work, Jim?
Yes.
9:30.
All right, then I think any public notice on the meeting in the Sequoia Room should probably say 10 o'clock.
If you all will go around the horn while I go get on the horn, I may be able to have an answer for you.
Well, let's finish this and then we go into closed session.
Well,
you can tell us.
You're going to go through board member matters.
Yeah.
Let me absent myself and probably can come back with a definite answer.
Wait a minute, let me go next because I have a question of Bob.
Well, Bob always has to sit through the board announcements.
I'm trying to hasten the arc of justice.
Well, you can have somebody call around. We have all these closed sessions. We're not going anywhere.
Okay. But I wanted to have it for the reporters and the public.
Okay, you want to go next?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I will be at the COG Wednesday night. I'm sort of interested that we have the FEMA maps back, and I can't make the meeting in Angels tomorrow night because I have COG. But why are we not having a study session here on the FEMA maps for the county? All that information was done here. It seems to me we should schedule a study session here with the TV cameras and the board, and actually before this goes out to community meetings, it seems to me there should have been a discussion before the board by FEMA on the FEMA maps.
The purpose of the meetings is for FEMA to take input from people in the county. So having a study session after these two public meetings for input is totally appropriate. But
okay, then I would like to ask the board if there's support to have a study session by FEMA after the community meetings and go over the maps that they're proposed with us and maybe give us a summary of how they interpreted the community meetings to go. Also, I think it would be good to schedule a study session with planning and get an update on how they're processing their workloads. I know when Brent was here as the interim, he tried to sort of organize it into 2 or 3 different sort of groups. I would like to have a study session and go over the workload and how they've organized it and how what's their timelines for processing, particularly the older items. And I also would like to have an update on, like in the last 6 months, how many new applications are we processing, and what is sort of some indication of what some future economic activity is going to be 6 months or 9 months out. Would be at least in real estate, would be a pretty good reflection on what the applications are that are current that are being processed. And then thirdly, it would seem to me it would be we need to have at some point another. We've all gotten bogged down in the budget, but we need another update on the general plan and how that's processing. One of the concerns I have, quite frankly, is when we started all this and we started attaching community plans. I was a strong advocate, and the board basically concurred at that time. I don't know if they still do. That if the community plan started to hold down the processing of the general plan, that we would proceed with the general plan and come back and do the community plans. And I think we need to hear from Mintier and planning as to whether that's in fact happening, because the sense I have is that may to some degree be happening, and I don't want to hold up the general plan. I think we need to get a new general plan in place and not get bogged down with community plans and issues within different community areas, and every community plan will have its own set of issues that will be independent of the general plan. And I think we need to get a general plan in place. So anyway, I would like to see those 2 study sessions get scheduled.
Actually 3, right?
Well, one's with planning, but it's on two areas. One's the workload, and one's the general plan update, and then the FEMA maps. So that, and I will be at COG, I said, right? Okay, I'll just give one other comment. I don't know if I did it when I gave my RCRC sort of update at the budget, but RCRC is very intensely engaged and concerned about the change in the Clean Water Act that takes navigable waters and takes navigable out, which means then that the federal government will have charge of all waters, not just navigable waters. And there's a real question as to what that does with water rights, county of origin rights, anything, if the federal government's going to have the preemptive call on all uses of water. Agriculture is very concerned. I mean, it looks like it would be agricultural ditches. I mean, it even could come down to swim pools. I mean, it's all water, period, the way they want this thing to go forward. And there's, you know, the way RCRC characterized it is it's, you know, almost had no publicity in the papers, and it probably is as significant as anything out there as its effect upon rural counties, upon the economy, upon all kinds of issues. We're hearing a lot about energy and cap and trade, appropriately so. We're hearing about health care, but quite frankly, if that goes through, it could be absolutely huge as to what the consequences would be if the federal government took over and had the a priori call on all water in the United States, period, just water. There's water, it's owned by the federal government. The federal government decides how you can use it and how you convey it and who gets it. So that's an absolutely huge issue that for some reason has sort of been under the radar screen that needs to get a whole lot more attention. So that completes my comments.
Supervisor Walensky.
I have the Mental Health Board meeting today after the board meeting. I am meeting with the Jim Boyd from the Air Quality Control Board and regarding forestry and CHIPS project and restoration of watershed and forests in the area. I have a CHIPS board meeting on Wednesday night. On Thursday, no board appointed aspects, and I'll be attending the West Point Community Fair on Sunday. I have three other issues I'd like to just quickly raise. I'm getting a lot of complaints on the transit schedule, which people are saying has now made it impossible to get to work from West Point Railroad to the county. So some county employees have approached me on that. They were taking the bus. They can no longer do it unless they get up at about 5:30 and head in and wait for 3 hours. I'm also getting complaints from people trying to get from San Andreas to our area or from San Andreas to Jackson. These are people who have had to rely for their livelihood to get back and forth as well as accessing services. They say that the connections are impossible to make without hours and hours of waiting. And I was under the impression that we were going to try to coordinate schedules better in this new change, and that has not been the experience of the people who have been calling me, so I'm hoping people might look into, not just from a perspective of one part of the county, but look at the people traveling from other parts to be able to get the linkages between the routes more efficient.
Have you talked to Jamie about this?
I'm just reporting this as correspondence. I've had 5 or 6 calls this week, and it seems to be a mounting concern in our area. I will talk to Jamie. On another matter, Hospice of Amador is interested in developing services here in Calaveras County, and will be contacting each of the board members to talk about holding meetings in your area.
That's the expansion of services here.
Yes.
Take the void from the Sonoras.
Yes. We send our folks to the 2 surrounding counties, and the question is whether we can develop services, hospice services, to a greater extent here in Calaveras. So they'll be requesting each of us to support and facilitate meetings in our districts, and you should expect that call or communication within the week. And actually, that's all I have to report.
You know, we had a hospice in Calaveras. In fact, yes, we did. And just because of consolidating and financing, it was expensive to have an office. And, I mean, I can't address this end of the county, but the Highway 4 corridors had excellent service from Tuolumne's hospice.
Well,
some of the hospice workers live over here in Calaveras, so I haven't been displeased. I haven't, but I didn't know about this side.
I guess the primary motivation, well, there are several reasons for this. One has to do with the burden that is upon other counties to support our folks, and secondly, the difficulty of the family commutes to these other places, that having people closer to home, having a facility here in Calaveras might be of benefit to the residents here and their families. It would require financing. Generally, most of these have been supported by thrift stores. And so part of the discussion would be if there was to be an additional thrift store, since many of our local charities and institutions rely on that income. There are several here in San Andreas, for instance. What would be a location that would be possible for that without defeating or competing with other existing operations?
Okay. Thank you for that information.
Stephen, so Amador wants to take over all of Calaveras, or they want to split it with Tuolumne?
They just want to initiate a discussion with us to see what our pleasure might be and what level of support and interest there would be in Calaveras County for a local service.
Okay, Supervisor Toffenelli, I think I interrupted you when you started talking. Excuse me.
I'll be at the FEMA meeting tonight in San Andreas, and that's all I have.
I thought I heard you say you were headed back to Hawaii.
Well, in the chaos in my plans. But no, I'm not.
Okay.
I fulfilled my obligation and saw all my grandchildren and played with them on the beach and had many Mai Tais and all that before breakfast.
Did you use the word obligation in connection with that?
Yeah, I heard that.
I did.
Wait till your wife hears that
All right. I have a request here. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times before, but I'm going to be gone on Tuesday the 21st and actually leaving on the 18th. And I have a LAFCO meeting scheduled on the 20th that I will not be able to attend. So Tom will be there. Marita was the alternate, and she said she can't make it. So could I ask either or both Supervisor Toffenelli and Walensky to look at your schedules and see if you'd be able to...
This is Monday the 20th?
That's correct.
And what time?
6 o'clock.
I could be there.
I could be there also.
Flip a coin.
You go, Gary.
I think
you go, Gary?
That'd be a good idea for you to...
Okay, I'll attend the LAFCO meeting.
Okay.
6 p.m., Monday the 20th, here in this room.
Tom, isn't it true that the LAFCO meeting is here?
Well, a lot of times it's down in Sequoia room.
I'll let
you have to find out.
I'll let you know.
Madeline, get the agenda. Call John Benoit and get the agenda and make sure Steve gets a copy of it. I think I'll be here for it, but if for some reason I'm not, I will call Madeline.
Steve will be your backup.
And I'll be Russ's backup, and I'll need your packet whenever
we're going to take a week, 10 days, and go someplace. Okay. I don't think I'll be here next Tuesday.
All right. I will be also attending the FEMA workshop here tonight at the Sequoia room. And we're quite obviously in all these budget deliberations and things, and I have a proposal that I'd like to run a flag up the flagpole here on a revised meeting schedule for the Board of Supervisors for fiscal year 9-10. Looking closely at, or just glancing at this page, you'll see 4 green blocks. Those refer to the 5th Tuesdays that are going to be in the fiscal year 2009-10. Starting with September 29th, is normally a dark day. Likewise, December the 29th, of course, is we take off that week anyhow, or usually customary. But anyway, the gist of this proposal comes from looking across the river at Tuolumne County. For the longest time, they have observed a schedule that anytime that there are 5 Tuesdays in a month, they go dark on the 4th and the 5th Tuesday. They just meet on the first 3 Tuesdays. And the advantage that gives, as I understand it, and talking with a couple of supervisors over there, is that the staff is given the benefit of producing 8% fewer agenda packets through the year. And it also gives the benefit for individual supervisors of being able to schedule a vacation that is longer than 7 days, that you would have an opportunity to go for an 8-day or 9-day or 10-day trip out, like, for instance, to Hawaii. You could have come back next week, Gary. But this, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer this. I don't intend any action to be taken on this today, of course, but just wanted to throw it out for your consideration.
Well, let's think on that.
How long do you need?
Another 30 seconds.
The option, of course, is if you adopt something like this, that is the general rule. The option certainly presents itself if you needed to schedule a meeting on the days that you are generally scheduled off, that you could. You would have those four times during the year that you could call a special meeting. Okay. The other thing that I have made a decision on is that this is not next week, but the following week I will be attending the Rebuilding California from the Ground Up Local Government Summit, sponsored by CSAC in Sacramento on the 17th and 18th. And I would encourage other members of the board to go to that. I think it would be helpful. That concludes my report for the week. How about you, Mr. Lawton?
Well, Supervisor Thomas, I'll be at the Sequoia Room on Thursday for the budget hearings. We've got a confirmation the Sequoia Room will be available. We've got just to be clear, we have closed session scheduled at 9:30 here at the County Council's conference room, to be followed immediately by budget hearings at the Sequoia Room. Is that my understanding of the sequence of events?
Yes.
So that if you're at the Sequoia Room at 9:30, you won't be too early, but the time that the board begins its budget hearings will depend on how long it takes to go through the closed session. Is that, so we're clear on that?
That's correct.
Okay.
So to tell staff and the public, the soonest we'd be meeting would be 10 o'clock in the Sequoia Room.
No earlier, probably no earlier than that, yeah.
That's good.
Good point.
10:30 or something. Give us an hour.
Okay, well, let's make sure we, if you want, is it the board's pleasure to say 10:30 in the Sequoia Room, no sooner than?
Okay.
No sooner than 10:30.
Okay.
I think it might take a while, depending on the outcome of the vote.
And then we got to get there.
Okay. So there'll be a closed session pursuant to items, a continuation of item 16 on today's agenda, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. 10:30 will be down at the Sequoia Room for budget hearings on Thursday.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, Thursday.
I think.
Madeline.
I know that.
Looks like
Come
you have
on, Madeline, I know you went to a concert somewhere. How was it? Well, who was it playing? You don't know. Well, I'm glad it was good, Madeline. I'm glad it was good.
Okay, I think that concludes our meeting here today. At least the public portion of it will be going into several closed sessions this afternoon, and we will be reconvening as stated for a closed session at 9:30 on Thursday. Thank you very much.
Are we going to take a lunch break or go straight into closed session?